This is a quick overview on one of the constitutional provisions that helps limit the abuse of the power of the national government against the citizens of the United States. So, one of the subtle provisions that the founding fathers placed in the Constitution goes back to the compromise over representation between the highly populated states and the states with small populations. That's going back to, when they debated how to form the legislative branch, and they had the debate between the Virginia plan and the New Jersey plan. So, just real quick recap: the Virginia plan wanted two separate parts to the legislative branch. The branch that makes laws. It's probably the most powerful branch of government we have because they create laws in which how they run our government and our society. And so they wanted two separate entities of that branch. And in both those branches, they wanted the number of seats or votes that states would get to be based on the population of that state. So the more population you had, the more votes you would get. The smaller states, of course, disapproved of this because they felt they'd be taken advantage of when it came to actually make laws. And so they formulated the New Jersey plan. They wanted one branch of the legislative branch of the government, one house. And in that house, they wanted every state to have the same number of votes. One vote. Of course, the large states disagree with that because, well, they feel they should have a little more of a say because they have more people. Compromise was struck, and known as the Great Compromise or the Connecticut Compromise. And in that compromise, they borrowed pieces from each one. The first part was, of course, to divide the legislative branch into two houses. It's what we have today, the House of Representatives and the Senate. In the House of Representatives, they used the idea of proportional representation. The more population your state has, the more votes you will get. That came directly from the Virginia plan. So, for example, today, under the system that we have, Kansas has 4 votes, while California has 53. Just a few more people in California than Kansas. The New Jersey plan brought into this compromise the Senate. In the Senate, each state, regardless of their size, would have equal representation, 2 votes per state. There's 100 senators in our U.S. Senate today. If we were to happen to add another state, there would be 102. That created the legislative branch. So we have the Congress, which is the simple word we use for legislative branch, and it's broken into the 2 parts, the Senate and the House of Representatives. One based on proportional representation, the other on equal. This is important because the lawmaking process is done through the legislative branch. So how a bill becomes a law, I'm not going to read all of this, but what's significant here? Again, going back to the debate, small states didn't want to be taken advantage of by the large states. At the time that the Constitution was written, Virginia essentially would have dictated whatever happened in the nation. They would have had roughly 25 votes, which was way more than any other state. So they could have strong-armed any legislation they wanted to put through. But this system allowed for an internal check on the lawmaking process to ensure that one group or region or area wasn't dominating this process. So for a bill, the bill is the word we used before a law is a law. A bill has to be introduced into either the Senate or the House of Representatives. So let's say the House of Representatives introduces a bill. It's a tax bill because actually the Constitution requires that any law or bill that has to do with revenue or taxes must actually start in the House because they like that idea because it was closer to the people. Well, anyway, starts in the House. House debates it, they fix it up, they pass it. Well, they can't have that go to the president to be signed and become a law until the Senate debates it and passes the same exact bill for the president to sign. So if some of the larger states in the House of Representatives support it and they get it passed in the House, the smaller states can still manage to block this piece of legislation that they may view not necessary. So it requires a compromise between the 2 houses of the legislative branch. They usually pull parts of it out that they disagree on, add other things to compromise, and then they'll agree on it. It gets sent to the president. The president has to sign it before it becomes a law. Of course, the other check on that could be the president vetoes it and sends it back to be reviewed. But that is an internal check of power on the legislative branch itself. It's very hard to get a law passed. It has to go through both the House of Representatives and the Senate and pass the same exact bill to be signed by the president.